So our next speaker, and right on time, is Reana May Yen Ng, and I've got a bit of a profile here. If I just scroll down, we'll see what's going on there. So Reana is a master's student from the University of Malaysia. She's interested in on wildlife trade, sustainable development, and multiculturalism. Most recently involved in CITES report on the implementation and enforcement mechanism for seahorses. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Zoology and Ecology from University of Otago in New Zealand. And she is project leader in the Tracing Seahorses National Seahorse Survey at Save Our Seas, SOS Malaysia. And today she'll present a research on the use of seahorses in traditional medicine and cultural values in Malaysia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I have access to share screen?
You may already have it. If it says co-host, I can just check. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can. That's fine, you can.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay.
Okay.
Right. So, hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. I also want to thank the organizers for this opportunity to share this ongoing research entitled Seahorses in Traditional Medicine and Cultural Values in Malaysia. So I'm supervised by Dr. Amy Then from the University of Malaya and Dr. Adam Lim from Seahorses Malaysia. So I'll start off by introducing the topic. So we'll start with seahorses. 12 out of the 48 seahorse species have been recorded in Malaysian waters thus far. This group of unique marine fishes is extensively distributed worldwide. They live in a wide range of habitats in tropical and temperate shallow waters, such as seagrass beds, seaweeds, coral reefs, estuaries, and mangroves. So seahorses are well known for their importance, not just biologically and ecologically, but also medicinally, economically, and are valued culturally by communities across the globe. So in terms of what we currently know about how seahorses are being traded and what for, the majority of the seahorses that are exported in dried forms for traditional medicine and curios, the dried forms are for traditional medicine and curios, or alive for the aquarium trade. So Malaysia is significantly involved in the exploitation of seahorses due to its extensive territorial waters, which are important habitats to them. So in Malaysia, the majority of the traded seahorses was sold for use in traditional Chinese medicine, so either domestically or in other Asian markets. There's also a pre-packaged seahorse medicine that has become quite prominent in the country as well. So as we live in a multi-ethnic and multicultural country, we would expect that the usage of seahorses in traditional medicine could be quite diverse, right? So a study by Chu and Liu in 2005 found that the Chinese community appreciates its medicinal properties as a cure for asthma, skin conditions, relief of heatiness, cleansing of the blood, and many more. So some of the most common methods of preparations include boiling seahorses in plain water or together with other Chinese herbs, depending on the type of illness. So the Malay fishing communities also consume seahorses to obtain similar health benefits, but preparations are slightly different. So these include burning seahorses to extract their ointment, toasting and grinding them into powder to add to their coffee, boiling in plain water or with mixed herbs, or even eaten deep fried as crackers, which is a custom that is very popular among the East Coast fishers. So the coastal Malay communities also believes that dried seahorses can dispel evil spirits by hanging them in their homes or worn with a string around the neck of newborns and toddlers. The potential use of seahorses in the Indian community and the Orang Asli, who are the indigenous community in Malaysia, have yet to be discovered. Seahorses are also used to make keychains or varnished and sold together with other decorated seashells as souvenirs. Live seahorses, on the other hand, are commonly kept as pets. The live seahorse trade in Malaysia appeared to be conducted on a relatively minor scale, and it depends completely on imports into Malaysia. So despite there being minor exports of live seahorses, the exporting of live seahorses is illegal in the country. So how exactly are those seahorses commonly caught? So this diagram here shows how trawl fisheries work. Trawl nets are large nets that are dragged along the seabed, catching shrimp and everything in their path, tearing up the seafloor and marine ecosystems. So any kind of marine fauna that are living in the area where trawl fisheries are often gets caught by trawlers. So it is a very destructive fishing method with extremely high yielding outcome, making it a dominant fishing method, resulting in the loss of seahorse bycatch. Bycatch from trawlers accounts for the largest source of seahorses in the international wildlife trade. Most of the dried seahorses in Malaysia were landed as bycatch, primarily by large-scale trawlers, but also in other fishing gears. It was found that the highest levels of non-target organisms were caught in demersal trawls, targeting shrimps and fin fishes. In Malaysia, seahorses have been caught incidentally by trawlers off the coast of Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak, and Labuan. However, there are trawlers and divers who target seahorses in small scale by focusing their fishing efforts in particular seahorse habitats. So seahorses are species of great conservation concern, as they are heavily traded, especially in Southeast Asia. Over 5 million, that's the number of dried seahorses that are exported from the Asian region annually on average. Malaysia is among the 32 nations that collectively traded up to 45 kgs annually of dried seahorses in China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Singapore. Malaysians reportedly consume traditional Chinese medicine that contain approximately 3,000 kgs of seahorses, which is equivalent to almost 1 million seahorses back in 1998. So a clear understanding on the cultural context of seahorse usages for medicinal and other purposes is important to inform effective and culturally relevant conservation and intervention measures. But little had been done on this cultural aspect. So the last seahorse trade in Malaysia was conducted 2 decades ago. Therefore, recent seahorse trade information is very much needed to ascertain the current extent of seahorse exploitation, both locally and internationally. So as a country under the Appendix 2 seahorse listing, Malaysia still faces challenges to meet obligations under CITES due to the lack of knowledge on seahorse trade, which then leads to a lack of urgency. So by acquiring these current information, we can provide valuable advice on the best way to implement the listing and thus promote sustainable seahorse trade. Findings from this research could also demonstrate the need to reinforce seahorse trade regulations locally and internationally and get seahorses to be at least partially protected in Malaysia. So with this research, we aim to document the traditional medicinal usage and cultural beliefs involving seahorses by Malaysians as part of a wider project to investigate culturally linked trade of seahorses. So our first objective is to characterize the patterns of consumption usage of seahorses and the underlying motivation among the public of different ethnic groups. Secondly, we determine the degree of non-consumption usage of seahorses and the awareness level of seahorse threats among the same group of people. So we conducted an online public survey among 500 respondents in Malaysia, so across 13 states and 3 federal territories, via Google Forms over 2 months, where we gathered responses on the consumption usage of seahorses, the underlying motivation to consume them, the non-consumption usage, and the awareness level of seahorse threats. So what we found to date was, out of the 500 respondents, 6.4% reported consuming seahorses, which is equivalent to 32 respondents. The top 3 most common underlying motivations to consume seahorses among the 32 respondents are because it treats and prevents diseases and it keeps them healthy. So the majority of the respondents consume seahorses to treat skin conditions, facilitate blood cleansing, treat heatiness, increase and balance energy flow, and very little to treat asthma. So more Chinese respondents reported that they consume seahorses to treat skin conditions and increase and balance energy flow than Malays and Indians. However, more Malay respondents consume seahorses to treat asthma compared to Chinese respondents. Consuming seahorses to facilitate blood cleansing and treat heatiness were only seen in Chinese respondents. So knowing that there is almost zero information of the Malaysian Indian demographic using seahorses in any form, interestingly, we found that an Indian respondent consumed seahorses to treat increase and balance energy flow and treat skin conditions, but at a relatively lower frequency. So in terms of the use of seahorses for non-consumption purpose, we found that out of the 500 respondents, 2.6% used seahorses for non-consumption purpose, which represented 13 respondents. And those respondents mostly use seahorses as curios and souvenirs. We discovered that using seahorses as curios and souvenirs were more common among the Chinese and Malay communities, while keeping seahorses as pets were only seen in the Chinese and Indian communities. Whereas using seahorses for external application in ointment form was a common non-consumption usage by Indians only. Overfishing, habitat destruction, bycatch, and ocean plastic pollution were selected as major threats by most respondents. Relatively more respondents considered habitat destruction and plastic pollution as a major threat in comparison to overfishing and bycatch. So to summarize, these initial findings suggest that seahorse consumption is more common than non-consumption usage by Malaysians. The consumption and non-consumption use of seahorses are linked to cultural specific health benefits and usages. And seahorse threats are also quite recognized by Malaysians. So besides the public survey, we are also conducting a fisher, traditional medicine, curio, and aquaria survey by interviewing local fishers, traditional medicine practitioners, curio and aquaria traders, respectively, on other aspects of the trade. So I would like to bring you along on a virtual trip to Malaysia, I would say, to share some really interesting pieces of local findings during my time interviewing fishers. So this right here is Pulau Ketam, also known as Crab Island, which is off the coast in the state of Selangor. A fisher in his 60s that we interviewed actually targets seahorses. So his catch could go between 3 to 40 seahorses, and he usually sells them to aquarium fish traders and wholesalers. And it seems that fishers in the village who sell dried seahorses would usually collect at least 1 kg of dried seahorses before selling them to Johor, which is another state in Malaysia. So off to the next location. This was taken in Pontian Besar in the west coast of Johor. So an interesting one about this is that this fisher consumed seahorses that landed as bycatch to treat stomach discomfort. So he said that he used to catch 20 to 30 seahorses at a time a few years back, but only 1 to 2 presently. In the same area, another fisher in his 60s, representing the Malay community, keeps seahorses as curio to protect himself against evil spirits. As a kid, he used to hang dried seahorses on tree branches and would usually use it along with the Al-Quran. In Bagan Parit Besar, I interviewed this fisher on a rainy, chilly day, as you can imagine. he would usually give the seahorses he caught to traditional medicine shops for the practitioners to include it as an ingredient for his personal use to treat skin conditions and facilitate blood cleansing. He would also sometimes make those seahorses into keychains as well. Interviewed a few fishes right here in Parit Sakai, and one of them had a few seahorses kept in a plastic container as ornaments. So the interesting part about this is that he represents the Indian community. So this is something that we rarely come across, especially in the Indian community in Malaysia. So before I end, I would just like to thank our funder, Yayasan Haji Zainuddin, and the Incitement, where we are currently crowdfunding. I also want to thank Ainur, Jainan, Aurelia, Legin, Darren, and Kusila for their contributions in various aspects of this project. And of course, Dr. Amy and Dr. Adam for your continuous support. Here are the references, and that brings us to the end. If you'd like more information about the project, here is a link to our Facebook page, or you can contact me directly. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Reana. That was great. And I liked the little side trip to the fishery at the end with the photographs. That was great. Anyone got any questions? Please come forward now, either by unmuting or I'll keep an eye on the chat line. Oh, there's something come through in the chat line. Let's see if I can read that. It's from Miguel. It says, great talk, Reana. Very interesting talk as it shed light on the uses of seahorses and their underlying reasons for them. Have you assessed the economical relevance of the seahorse trade at the location countries you are focusing your research in?
Sorry, could you repeat that question, please? Or is it in the chat box?
It's in the chat box. Yeah, that's okay, quite a long one, but it's basically what have you researched the economical relevance of the seahorse trade in the different countries and places?
Right. So currently, as this is an ongoing project, currently we're going out to interviewing people like fishers, curio traders, aquarium traders, and traditional medicine practitioners, of course. So in terms of the economic wise, I would say that relates much to basically how the trade of seahorses helps economically in our country, Malaysia, as well as how it may benefit overseas. That relates much of seahorse trade, I would say. So we haven't really gotten much into that in detail because we're mostly looking at opinions and perception of Malaysians and how they use them and for consumption and non-consumption usages. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Anyone got any other questions at the moment? Or is this one I see on the chat again?
Yeah, so
yes,
it's one by Tom Doe. Yeah. So did any respondents report that seahorses help strengthen sexual endurance specifically? So it is, so as an aphrodisiac, I would assume, it is quite common, but I would say it's more so common in the Malay communities instead of the Chinese communities in Malaysia, because particularly among the members of the public, and also there was a couple of fishers in Johor when I visited to do a fisher survey, who actually mentioned that it is quite a Muslim thing to use seahorses, particularly for this, for example, for this usage of strengthening sexual endurance specifically. So it's more common among Malays than Chinese, I would say, but there is, yeah, absolutely.
And from the respondents, it looks like it's much more common in China and Vietnam. There you go. Very interesting. All right, if there are no other questions, I'll thank Reana very, very much for that very interesting talk. And